this year's been, I would say, quite heavy, I think, for a lot of people, especially because how inflation's hit their pocketbook, dramatically in many ways. How have you, and especially with the way you live your life, like from this minimalist perspective, how have you kind of pivoted in your own way to be able to still live the life you want, but also keep track really well of your own expenses?
So it's interesting that you say that, because for me personally, the financial side of COVID actually was quite beneficial for me, because at the time I was self-employed. Both my husband and I technically got laid off because I was a realtor. So my industry was just like shot dead for a long period of time. And with those stimulus checks and also budgeting very carefully, in addition to housing prices being lower and a couple of other variables, we were able to accumulate enough to be able to put a down payment on a house out of state. Formerly, I'm from California. There's no way you can accumulate 20% of $1 million in just a year. But it's interesting you say, because our finances actually started shaking out to be a lot better due to the original stimuluses of the pandemic, simply because we had enough of a cushion to where we didn't have to use that stimulus for our basic expenses. We had a cushion already allotted for that. So the stimulus just went into our savings for our future goals, which came due. We bought our house in 2021, early 2021. So for us, it was actually beneficial simply because we were prepared for emergency, and we had the ability to be able to do that with budgeting and just being critical with how we spent.
Jennifer, it's great that you actually had the mindset to think in that way, to have an emergency fund, to put something away for a rainy day when it's absolutely necessary and vital, and like secure yourself and your family's future when that is on the horizon. So it's great that you went through that process to think that way and actually do it. And Joe, like being in the situation you're in right now, like how important was that while you were on your journey to financial freedom, to always have that also in your mind of having an emergency fund, having money there for expenses that may not be expected?
Oh yeah, having an emergency fund is vital, and I've always had one. Always paid off my credit cards. We do use credit cards out of convenience, and even in today's economy, when you're buying half your things online, you need a credit card. But absolutely, never got into a position where I started borrowing at 20% and then 20% again, 20% again. You make this big snowball that you got to manage. Having an emergency fund is huge while you're accumulating. And actually, while Jennifer was talking, I have a massive emergency fund right now. I have 4 years of expenses in what I call bucket one to manage events like a bear market, high inflation. Really, my lifestyle hasn't changed at all due to inflation. The bear market is probably 10 times the effect, but that's more emotional because you see your investments go down. But I'm prepared with 4 years of expenses inside of a emergency fund that is outside of the stock market in things like I-bonds and CDs and money markets. I really can't say my lifestyle is changing with the inflation. I've seen this before. I don't panic. That's one of the things about being a little bit older. You see these events where inflation goes up to 10% and everybody panics. It'll come back down. Let's see, stock market drops by 20%. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Well, do nothing. Look at history and how these things come around. So having that buffer of an emergency fund allows me to almost yawn at a 30%, 20% drop in the market and high inflation. Emergency fund makes all the difference.